Welcome back to the Amy McManus Show on AM 1480 WLEA. I just found out this past week that you can go online and get the menu for the Hornell School District cafeterias. They have their own little monthly newsletter. Who knew? I actually looked it up because I wanted to see if they had any meatless days. I came across this great story about meatless Mondays. In Arlington Elementary School in Baltimore, Maryland, the school district has adopted Meatless Mondays, the first of its kind in the nation. A woman by the name of Melissa Mahoney, who is a chef and dietitian, she's both chef and dietitian, with the school district, said the idea started as part of a themed approach to planning lunches for the school year, and she was approached by some representatives of Meatless Monday. The problem is she didn't really know much about these Meatless Monday people. They're part of a national and international group who, shall we say, have support from some of the more fringe elements of animal rights activism, including People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA. By the way, did you know PETA wants to rent an empty prison building in Virginia that the state's planning to close, and they want to turn it into a chicken empathy museum? But back to the Meatless Monday. The Meatless Monday website declares that their nonprofit initiative, in association with the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, the goal is to help reduce meat consumption 15% in order to improve personal health and the health of our planet. The website also mentions voluntary meatless days during periods of war that were endorsed by Presidents Woodrow Wilson and Franklin D. Roosevelt. Wow, that's interesting that those two historical figures would be connected in any way to this story. By reviving this American tradition, we can improve our health, reduce our carbon footprints, and lead the world in the race to mitigate climate change. I still don't understand the connection between not eating meat and climate change. I really wish someone would explain that to me. J. Patrick Boyle, President and CEO of the American Meat Institute, sent a letter last week to Andres Alonso, CEO of the Baltimore City Schools, urging him to drop Meatless Mondays. He says the entire initiative is part of the Grace Spira Project at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and the name Spira refers to animal rights activist Henry Spira, the infamous founder of Animal Rights International. Boyle said that the decision by Baltimore school system means that for those 50,000 students, who are eligible for free and reduced meals, school is the only place they're getting a healthy meal. He says, quote, now you are removing a meat or poultry entree on Mondays and depriving children and their parents of the ability to determine what is appropriate for their diets and their own personal circumstances, unquote. He also urged administrators to visit the project, has these series of videos at a website called meattricks.com. Meattricks is kind of a takeoff on the Matrix. And they have these really ridiculous indoctrinational videos where these little cartoon agent-pigs are talking about the evils of dairy farms. It's fabulous. They apparently also give out Best Pie awards across the country. Great. Another award a lot of people talked about this past week, the Nobel Committee's choice to give President Obama the Peace Prize, it apparently was not as unanimous initially as they thought. There's a story coming out of Oslo that 3 of the 5 members of the Norwegian Nobel Committee had objections to the prize being awarded to the president. The Norwegian tabloid Verdens Gang reported Thursday that they had spoken to a number of sources who confirmed the impression that a majority of the Nobel Committee at first had decided not to give the Peace Prize to Barack Obama, but that eventually, quote, all supported the committee's final decision. Russian bloggers were also weighing in. The editor-in-chief of Russia and Global Affairs magazine said, quote, it's the first time a verdict of the Nobel Committee has had such a reaction as this year's one. Never before has a politician been awarded not for his deeds but for his intentions. He is charming, he is eloquent, and he is saying right things and calling for fine aims. But, he says, the charming smile and declarations other than achievements were what this prize was about. So Russians calling it like it is. This Russian has been making news, overseas especially. Professor Igor Panarin, former KGB analyst, he's been talking about this for about 6 months or so, and he's really been vamping it up. He's appearing on all these different shows over there. He says the United States will disintegrate. that with the economy in free fall, unpopular wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and growing hardships at home with recession, he thinks that the United States is basically going to break down in June 2010. They're going to break into several states, with California and its border states forming the California Republic with strong allegiances to China, Midwest states forming their own state called the Central North American states. He says Alaska will go back to Russia, plus, and I love this one, the Northeast and New England states will join with the European Union, and he calls this Atlantic America. He's got this fancy map that he brings out and shows everybody. He says this will all come about after a fractious civil war due to economical and moral degradation and immigrants. What's fascinating about this guy's theories, and this was on CNN, is that they've been warmly received by the Kremlin because this guy regularly appears as a so-called United States expert and commentator on Russian television. And the national newspapers and his popularity both reflect and incite anti-American sentiment in Russia. Panarin says, we've seen indicators that what I'm saying is true, such as the Wall Street and bank bailouts, the mortgage crisis, and the domestic problems in the United States that didn't even exist 5 years ago. He says, as America shows more vulnerability, people are taking my predictions more seriously. The CNN report concludes that Russia, with its own problems, sees the possibility of the demise of its enemy, the United States, as a powerful distraction. Most interesting, the most conservative state in the nation, this guy says, Texas, and several others, including Florida, will form what he calls the Texas Republic, which will be under the Mexican government, or at least very strongly influenced by Mexico and by South America. Speaking of South America, President Hugo Chavez has ordered the acquisition by force of a landmark Hilton hotel on Venezuela's Margarita Island. The government's official gazette announced this Tuesday. The facility on the Caribbean resort island of Margarita in Nueva Esparta was targeted for state takeover. The presidential decree reads, quote, the acquisition by force of the real estate, furnishings, and related assets of the Margarita Hilton and Suites Hotel, that's all it says, has been ordered. The hotel has 280 rooms, 210 suites, a casino, stores, restaurants, offices and meeting areas, as well as that adjoining marina. Chavez's administration says this move was necessary as part of an urgent effort to boost tourism. What's interesting about this is the FCC diversity czar, Mark Lloyd, is rather fond of Chavez, and he called his takeover of the country an incredible evolution. This is the guy, Mark Lloyd, who said that free speech is both an exaggeration and a distraction. So maybe when Mr. Lloyd needs to take a vacay or he retires or he has to resign or something like some of the other advisors, he can hook up with Chavez and he'll get a discount on that new state-run Hilton in Venezuela. You've been listening to the Amy McManus Show on AM 1480 WLEA.